Hello, what you see here is particles, yes or no? And they behave in a very nice circular way, in a vortex sort of way. If you look closer, we have a pulsating motion right here. And if we get very close, we see it's not particles, it's blocks. Now if you ask me what can I use this for, this is kind of an odd question really, because what we do in this tutorial is so complex and so fast and straightforward that it's just sexy. It's just wonderful to do it, and you can use it in all your aspects of your work really. Like always, we start with a new scene, and we have the modeling menu set right here for the curves and surfaces. It doesn't matter whether you have FX or modeling or anything like that here. We'll need modeling in a second, but you can create the surfaces and the curves and the polygon objects right here. We'll start with a circle, and we don't want to have the circle lying flat on the ground, so we can rotate it. That's trivial, you might think. Yes, but you can go to make NURBS circle right here. That's an alternative, so to say, and the normal should be 1 and 0 here, and now you have a circle upright. We want to extrude that circle so it becomes a surface, and the icon for this is this one. It's the extrusion icon for the NURBS topology. Usually the extrusion is used with two curves. One is the profile curve, for example this thing here, this circle, and then you draw a curve like this through the scene, and this is gonna be the path. You select the profile and then with the shift key the path, and you can then create a surface. I've made tutorials about this earlier, and there are lots of tutorials about this as well. But this time I want to use the extrusion in a different way, and that's why we need the modeling menu set, and we need to go to surfaces now and extrude and use the option box. The option box by default is set to tube. That means exactly what I just said. You need two curves, and for the flat option as well, and you extrude the circle along a path. This is not what we want to do. We want to use the distance option, and the extrude length we can leave it there. It's the default of 1. It will get extruded in one, just a tiny little bit, but a surface will be created. So let's apply this and reset the settings and close that window. So this is the surface we created. Here in the attribute editor you have the extrude 1 as it's called, and you can change things here, for example the rotation like this, or the scale like this. Let's leave the scale at 1, and you can change the length, and that's what we're gonna talk about now. You can set keyframes for the length, of course, so you would typically use, for example, this length. Go to the beginning of the animation and press the key S, so this will be keyed. We'll make life much easier by typing in equals sine of time and press enter. This will give us a pulsating motion here, extrusion basically. It turns from gray to black because the surface is going to be reverted in the negative direction. We could fix this, but we won't fix this because this is just fine for now. We need to edit the length expression a little bit. So right mouse click, edit expression, and we want the extrusion to be much further to the right and to the left. So we type in 10 times sine of time, and we edit that. Now we get this much more elongated motion. If we want to have it faster, we can type on 3 times time. So that's very powerful and very simple, this sine expression. Let's extend the frame range to 500 so we see the loop a little bit longer, like this. And the next step is we create from that surface, not from the curve, particles. Particles sit under FX, nParticles, and emit from object. And we won't use the option box now because we'll handle the thing just in a second. Emit from object does this, which is already quite nice. And you see that it emits from 3, 6, 8 dots here, which are the dots of the geometry actually. When I select my surface, it has 8 sections right here, and that's where the particles emit from. If I had a surface which is much more detailed, like isopalms right here, we would have many more particles here in the middle. But for now, we have particles at both endpoints, and that's all. But we can change this by going back to the particles here, and it's an emitter thing, so we need to click on emitter. And the thing is basic emitter attributes. It emits omnidirectionally from the surface points. Let's instead emit the particles from the surface. And that's what changes now. Now we have a nice distribution of the particles on that surface, and then they fall down. But we don't see the effect really, because we need many more particles, so we go to emitter type surface and rate the particles per second, and we raise this from 100 to say 1000 per second. Now it's time to hide the geometry. We select the geometry, the circle and the surface, and we press H. Next thing, we can play with the particles now. So let's select the particles. First of all, from the top to the bottom, we cannot do anything about the count. It just tells us we currently have so many thousand particles in the scene. But we can change the lifespan. Instead of live forever, we ease the computation power time for our computer a little bit by typing in constant and say 5 seconds. I think that's in seconds. The particle size is currently set to a radius of 0.2, but since we have only dots here, which are by definition infinitely small, the radius doesn't do anything here. But it will do something in just a second, because we need to go down here to the appearance of the particles, and that's called shading. So we open the shading section, and we don't want to see points, we want to see spheres. The spheres are very big, that's why we jump up again here and change the radius to say 0.05. Or maybe bigger. Yeah, 0.1. Now we go down here again, and let's have a look at the color. Here is the color section. And we give the particles a different color, like that red. Now we would like to change the color while the particles fall down. That's very easy. The color input currently is set to constant. That means all the time the same color, but we can set it to age. And it won't change anything because the color is always orange. But when we, for example, use a ramp right here and turn it to, well, to blue, then the particles get blue the older they get. And if we want to have them orange longer, we just move the slider in here. Minimum and maximum, of course, is also possible right here. So what else can we do? Lots of things. Let's select the particles, go to Fields and Solvers, and now we create a Vortex Field. The Vortex Field currently has a magnitude of 5. Let's raise this further. Have a look at from the top. So we're mixing the original emission with the vortex. If we raise the attenuation, this happens. The vortex is much more restrained to an original place, whereas here it works all over the scenery and not only in at the position where it's actually positioned. The vortex field sits in the center of the scene, so we can find a value which we like. We can go to the nucleus, and the nucleus has a gravity, and we can change this by typing in a function. Let's use the cosine for change, COS, and parentheses open, and well, time, parentheses closed, enter. Now the gravity makes them not fall down all the time. It makes them move up and fall down. So we have this circling motion, and nobody would guess where it came from a simple NURBS extrude. Well, and since we like to play, let's finish this now. Let's finish it off. Let's create a polygon cube, I think. Sits in the center of the scene, and we give it a different color. Let's make it yellow, so the box is yellow, and we decrease the size. We make it really small. We could do this in the polycube section here, for example. Lower this to 0.5, so we have like a stick sort of thing, but it's very small now. And now we create a mesh network from this box, from this yellow box, and the mesh network sits here, mesh, and this one. Mesh creates 10 instances of this object. They're just sitting here and doing nothing, whereas the particles are still playing around like mad and quite wonderful. So how do we connect these points here? We actually don't need them all. I don't know if that does matter, but we select the particles now, and with the control key the mesh network, so we have selected them both, and now we go under FX, you find mesh utilities and connect the nParticles to mesh. And now we have quite a different thing. We have actual geometry here. Now you see quite clearly that the lifespan of the particles is limited. Before I get carried away totally, have a good day. Bye bye.